I'm attorney Zach Townsend with Pro Legal Care. I want to talk to you about gray divorce. A gray divorce has all of the elements of a traditional divorce. It's through a different lens because we're talking about people who are later in life. There are different dynamics because you don't have as much time to rebuild. When somebody is divorcing in their 30s, they have 30 years to rebuild. That's not true when you're divorcing in your 50s or your 60s. One of the core concepts of divorce is that every asset is valued. So when we're talking about valuing assets, that can become exceedingly complicated when you have a long-term marriage. In your average divorce, you might have a house, you might not. When you're dealing with divorce with people over 50, they almost always have a house, and oftentimes they have additional properties as well, properties that are rental properties or vacation homes or B&B or something that might even generate income. That can make a big difference because part of the divorce analysis that applies in all divorce is the determination of the income of the parties. If you are over 50 and you're divorcing, you're more likely to have a business. And a divorce with a business makes things a lot more complicated, especially when there are personal ties that connect to the business. There are other family members in the business. The business may have been started before the marriage began. There may be some contribution that the spouse has made to the business. All of that matters, and all of that is more likely to exist with longer marriages and people who are divorcing later in life. Oftentimes, your biggest asset is your pension, but that normally is a marital asset, which means that it gets divided, just like any other marital asset. Oftentimes, a pension is divided by cutting it right in half, and the spouse that's not the person with the name on the pension, they get a pension with their name on it, just like it would be theirs. Other times, we have the pension valued by a financial analyst. We include a lot of experts that we use as part of our process in our divorce practice, especially with long-term marriages. We have business appraisers, real estate appraisers, and other financial experts. And it all depends on the nature of the case and the types of assets that are included. We have a large network of experts that we rely on heavily because we know what we do well, and we know that relying on experts is what smart people do. Social Security, that's a component that we often don't see in divorces of people of a younger age. Your Social Security is considered to be your income, even if in a different context, it may not be. In the divorce context, your Social Security is considered to be your income. Your Social Security is like a retirement, but it's different than a pension or an IRA or a 401k. They are considered to be assets as well as income. Social Security income is not considered to be an asset. That's just not the way that the law sees it because it's an entitlement, quote unquote. You also should understand that with Social Security, you do have the right to claim an amount 50% of your spouse's Social Security income. So it doesn't come out of your spouse's Social Security income. But with the Social Security Administration, you can elect to take either the Social Security that you earned based on your own work credits or the Social Security that is an amount equal to 50% of your spouse's Social Security income, so long as you were married for at least 10 years. So sometimes the spouse says, oh, hold on, I don't want you to take half of my Social Security. Well, that's not the effect of what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is an amount equal to 50%, but it doesn't come out of the spouse's Social Security. This is true whether you're divorced or not. But if you're married for 10 years or longer, you have the opportunity to elect to take 50% of the Social Security of your spouse. And if you had multiple marriages that lasted more than 10 years, you can choose whichever one you'd like, which of course would be the higher one, to have 50% of your spouse's Social Security. What many people don't realize is that there are only two ways to solve any case. There's negotiation and there's litigation. Those are the only two ways to solve the case, and those are always the only two ways. You get to the finish line either way. It's called a settlement when you negotiate. It's a judge's ruling known as an adjudication when you litigate. So when you negotiate, you're probably going 100 miles an hour. When you litigate, you're probably going 20 miles an hour. So it's not like it's just twice as fast to negotiate. It's like 5 times as fast to negotiate. So you also hold the keys essentially when you negotiate. You know what you're getting yourself into. People usually don't want to litigate because, well, for one thing, since it takes so much longer, it's usually much more expensive. But you also don't know what you're getting yourself into. It's a real roll of the dice. It's a gamble when you litigate. So you might get a decision that nobody is happy with. The reason that it takes so long to litigate is the judge is involved. And when the judge is involved, the judge has a to-do list. All of these items that all have to be checked off the list before you can go on to the next and eventually get to a point where you have witnesses called and testimony heard and exhibits submitted for the court's consideration and a decision rendered by the judge. That's an adjudication. That's usually how a trial works. People don't normally want to do that because litigation is destructive to whatever is left of your relationship, something that is very expensive and it's just undesirable. So you want to have a situation where you know you might have to litigate because it only takes one person to force litigation, but you don't want to come out swinging necessarily if you could be a problem solver instead. And we're a problem-solving law firm. And the two ways to solve any case, negotiation or litigation, sort of mirrors the two different types of lawyers. Problem-solving lawyers and problem-making lawyers. It's sort of a spectrum. We are problem-solving lawyers. We're not interested in making this more difficult than it needs to be. We're not interested in creating problems where they don't exist unless we absolutely have to. Oftentimes, when the kids leave the home, they grow up, they move out, they start families of their own, it changes the dynamic between the parties. The marriage is just not the same anymore. There was a common goal, the children, that was your purpose, and now it's just not the same. People call that empty nest syndrome. The routines change, the values change, and there's this independence or freedom even for people to do what they want to do. But what happens is sometimes they realize that what they want to do is not what their spouse wants to do. Maybe you always thought that when the kids left, you'd be able to travel. Maybe that's not what your spouse wants to do. Or maybe that's part of how you've grown apart. Sometimes the children are the glue that keeps the family together, that keeps the marriage together. And without the children there, sometimes people feel a lack of purpose and a lack of motivation, and it's just not the same anymore. That's one of the things that kind of highlights the fractures in the relationships, or how sometimes people have just grown apart and you may not even know it until the children have left the house. And you may also feel how this has perhaps changed your identity. You're not the same person you were anymore. You're a parent of adult children. That's not what you were before. That changes the dynamic in a marriage. That can change how people feel about their own value system, regardless of the marriage. That's an important part of all of this. Times are changing. Values are changing. Perception is changing. What is important to people and what people think that they should tolerate or put up with, that's changing as well. More and more these days, you'll see cases of domestic violence in long-term marriages. Marriages of people who are over 50 or even over 60 have many instances of domestic violence. Even if it's not a physical abuse, which is what people normally think of when we talk about abuse. And many people who are victims of abuse, especially later in life, believe that they're not victims of abuse because they haven't been struck, or he pushed me once a long time ago, or something where just because it's not physical, they think, well, it wasn't abuse. And that's not true at all. Most abuse, in fact, is non-physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, things of that nature. Oftentimes, people will say, I can't move on, I can't divorce my spouse because my spouse controls all of the money. I can't move on because my spouse will punish me financially. My spouse has everything in their name. My spouse said that they're going to leave me with nothing. That's honestly more of a reason to proceed with a divorce, because nobody deserves to live like that. Nobody deserves to live under that kind of fear, under that kind of stress. And it's not true that you'll leave with nothing. The law requires that you leave with a fair and equitable division of assets. And there are remedies for people who are engaging in dishonest behavior or hiding money or trying to take away what's yours. Moreover, your peace of mind, your sanity, you can't put a price tag on that. That's invaluable. If you're considering a divorce, you should gather as much information as you can. Knowledge is power. Make sure that you understand that just because you schedule a consultation doesn't mean that you're committed to anything. Just because you decide, well, I'd like to know what my rights are. I'd like to get a sense of how much this costs. I'd like to know how maybe this can get started when I'm ready. You want to gather that information sooner than later. You don't want to wait till everything has boiled over and you're going to be dealing with an extremely stressful situation if that happens. You're going to have a lot of things on your plate to deal with at once. You need to get some of those questions answered now. So give me a call and we could talk about your new path forward.